Today, I want to share something that's been huge in making my healing journey that much smoother, which is make it okay to make mistakes. Make it okay to slide backwards, even though you're trying to improve something. Can you create an area and a space of inner compassion and forgiveness while you're trying to improve yourself? In this video, I want to provide some perspective about why this is important and how you can go about it. Life is all about the journey of becoming better, becoming a better version of ourselves, and that's just it. It's a journey, a process. It's not a destination. And on any kind of journey, you're going to have hilltops. You're going to have trips and stumbles. When you fall on the street, are you somebody who swears at yourself and is mad at yourself? Or do you just trip and say, oh, that was an accident. I'm going to pick myself up and get back to it. That's the kind of attitude that we want to have when we make mistakes that are possibly destructive. We want to really have that air of it's possibly an accident. It's possibly something emotionally or a triggering event happening inside of us that we're falling into, that's falling us to fall down and have those accidents. So just picture that, walking along on the sidewalk and you trip and you fall. It wouldn't be very helpful if you just swear at yourself and get angry at yourself. But what would be helpful is if you can pick yourself up again, shake it off, and continue. My name is Sarah Tomlinson, the girl with many secrets. Artist, advocate, and healer, here to inspire and empower you on your healing journey. And if you like this video, please take the time to hit the thumbs up and subscribe with the bell for further notifications every time a new video gets posted. I want to give you a little bit of a backstory about why this is important to me. I am a survivor of 13 years of coercive controlling abuse. There were a lot of drugs. I fell into a lot of insomnia, depression, and anxiety. And when I came out, all of these things still circulated in my life. I still had deep paranoia, deep anxiety, and I still had my addictions. I fell into a psychosis, had a spinal cord accident, and it was a very long road to recovery. It's been a long road to healing in general. And through that healing process, I fell back many times. I fell back in my emotional turbulences, in my healing, in my emotional reactions. But time and time again, it's been vital to understand that it's a process of betterment and we're not going to go on an incline all the time. It's okay to mess up and make mistakes. What makes the healing process faster on that way to a better version of ourselves, on the way to any unhelpful, habits or things that we want to have disappear in our lives, we have to be able to provide self-compassion and love for ourselves while we're improving, even if we fall back from time to time. I can tell you what made the process worse is when I fell back, I hated on myself for it. And I brought up that inner critic that judged myself, that shamed myself, even more for falling back. I knew it's not the person that I wanted to be. I knew it's a past version of myself, and felt like it was taking me farther and farther away from this future that I wanted to create. It felt like every time I fell back, my future was out of grasp and that it wasn't going to be possible for me. So I really at times hated on myself and judged up myself and was really hard on myself. But the truth is, it actually makes whatever we're trying to improve harder. It makes it harder to improve. So we have to try and cultivate a space of forgiveness, love, and compassion, even when we mess up. And if we do that, it actually becomes easier to improve. The big culprit in these situations is shame. Shame is one of the lowest energy emotions, and it's so low on the vibration and energy scale, it's really close to death. Often these mistakes and these poor behaviors or destructive behavior patterns that are coming up in our life, they could be coping mechanisms for something painful in our past. So if we have this behavior that is coming from a past negative situation and we add even more negative emotion to it, it's actually just going to enhance the trigger point of that situation. It's going to enhance that coping mechanism even more. So you already have this emotional block in your life from a negative experience. And if you hate on yourself, if you judge yourself, if you add more shame or guilt to it, it's actually just going to increase the disturbance in your energy and emotional field. So every time that something is triggered, it's actually going to become bigger and you're going to fall even deeper into the behavior that you're trying to change. If you are hard on yourself, if you're angry at yourself, if you add shame to an already shameful emotional trigger, it will actually make you want to escape and avoid whatever you're trying to change. And that's another reason why it makes it even worse and makes it even harder to change. You're adding the negative emotion, especially shame, and you're going to want to avoid it. Which means if you're avoiding something in your life, with your mind, with your consciousness, it's not something that you can actually look at and tackle productively to become better. So if we're adding negative emotions to an already negative situation, we're going to want to avoid it. And that's not going to be helpful and productive in changing it. So somehow, how are we going to neutralize a negative trigger inside of us, a negative emotional reaction, a negative behavior? You can't actually fix something by more negative, right? It's not like multiplying integers where you multiply a negative times a negative and you get a positive number. It's not like that. It's more like adding integers in math, where if you have negative and you add more negative, you're going to get more negative. So what you want to do and what you want to be able to cultivate in your life, you have a bunch of negative. You want to try adding some positive to it, to neutralize it within you, to make it okay. It seems really weird to have a mistake or a setback or a behavior pattern that keeps coming up that you feel bad about, that you know is not good. It feels weird to actually add love to it, to actually make it okay. It's not saying that it's okay. It's not saying that it's something you want and to have more in your life. What you're doing energy-wise, it's all about the energy. You're adding positive energy to it, neutralizing the trigger within you. And when you come to a neutral and acceptance place, that's a place where you can actually change from. You can't actually change from a negative place and go to a positive place. It's too far of a jump. By de-shaming whatever you have that you're messing up on, whatever you have that you're falling back on, you're actually creating a positive space for personal development. And that's what you want to do. You cannot positively develop from a space of shame. And that's why they have areas in cities where they have like safe injection sites for addicts, right? To go to take away the shame from an addiction that they have. We're not saying it's okay to, kill yourself repeatedly, with a poison, with a drug, with a needle. But what we are doing is we're adding the energy of love and acceptance to a behavior that theoretically this person wants to change. What would be unhelpful is if we added more shame to that. And that just takes that person on a space of shame and avoidance. So the only way to solve those problems is with love, is with acceptance, is by removing the shame. So that's an example of how it's used in society. So just think, how can you create a safe space? I was about to use a safe injection space. No. A safe space, right? That you can come into internally that makes it okay for you to go in there and make a mistake. And hold yourself in a space of compassion and forgiveness, knowing that you're human, knowing that you're on a journey of development and it's not going to be linear. So if you do something, particularly it's something that you're trying to change, but you fall back, here are some steps that you can take to make it easier for yourself. One is become aware that you're doing the thing. Sometimes it can just come up automatically as a coping mechanism or something. So this accident, this behavior, so often we're going through our behavior patterns in the day unconsciously. Sort of like you have to go to the washroom, so you're just going to go to the bathroom, and by the time you've gone out and done something else, it's like, oh, what was I actually doing in that room? It's because it was happening so unconsciously. So sometimes these unhelpful behavior things that we're trying to change happen unconsciously. So the very first step is to become conscious of it, and without adding any of those extra emotions like anger, judgment, shame, and guilt, just witness yourself doing it. You don't even have to try and stop in that moment. That might actually make it worse that day. Once you're in an activity, you're in it, and it might be too late to pull back. So witness yourself doing that and just accept it. So that's number one. Become conscious and witness yourself without negative feelings. Try to, without negative feelings, witness yourself doing it. Number two is to call yourself out on it, but not in a judgmental way. You could do this by writing it in a journal, or you can verbalize it if you're not around people, or you can say it in your mind. I am doing this thing that I wanted to change, and I am just going to accept that I'm doing it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be here. This is not who I want to be, but I am doing this thing. Okay, so really, again, you're bringing consciousness to it. Call yourself out on it, but in a non-judgmental way. Try to do it in an acceptance and neutral way. Again, we're trying to not add any negativity to the already negative emotional trigger that's caused this mistake or behavior originally. Number three is try to find the emotional root or trigger that happened during that day. Maybe it was even on the previous day that caused you to fall back into that behavior, into that mistake. What caused you to fall back to this? Because it's not the actual thing that you're doing that's the issue. If we just try to tackle the surface issue or the surface action, we're just going to keep repeating our mistakes. So what's actually really important, right? So now we've actually brought a neutral view to it. Now we can investigate it further. Whereas if we brought judgment and shame and guilt in those first steps, we wouldn't be able to dive into it deeper. That's why we bring compassion and love and neutrality to something, because we actually want to go back and find the root at what triggered the fallback. Was it something that somebody said? Was it a memory that came up? Was it a social situation? Is it something you're trying to work through? Try to find the root or emotional trigger that caused that behavior to happen, that caused that mistake again. Because that's the thing that we need to look at. As soon as we take away the root and the trigger, we have those behaviors less and less in our lives. The last step in this is to now bring love and compassion and forgiveness to it. And if it's something that was really a big deal, I actually like to sit down in my journal and write a forgiveness letter to myself. Because now we know the reason and the root that caused the mistake. So you can write a forgiveness letter and a layout of what happened that day that led you to do this thing that you're trying to fix. Write out a love and forgiveness letter to yourself. I forgive you. You were experiencing a lot of emotional turmoil from this triggering event, but from now on, I'm going to become more aware of when I'm experiencing these emotions and this trigger earlier on. And I promise myself to work on that emotional trigger or find a solution to that emotional trigger, which is causing the mistake. So you see how we've kind of are now able to work on the deeper problem within ourselves if we don't shame the action. And in that first example, like talking about the addiction case, or how society is looking at the addictions in a non-shameful way, it's not actually the addictions that are the big deal. It's the trauma that's happening underneath and the healing that's not happening. So this method is really allowing yourself to remove the pressure from the mistake, from the action, from the coping mechanism, to find the root cause in your life and look at healing for that. When we look at healing for the underneath trauma, emotional, and pain, all of this surface stuff and these disturbances in our life, they will fade away, which is so beautiful. And that is the power of healing. The big message of my channel is there is nothing wrong with you. All of the stuff and the behaviors that are happening on top of that is just a symptom of the stuff that's happening deeper inside of ourselves. And it is totally possible to find strategies and tools to look deeper to fix those root problems. I hope that video helps you today realize the importance of loving ourselves through our mistakes and through our mess ups. And really, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to make mistakes. We're not about perfection. We are actually here to make mistakes and learn from them in a process of self-betterment. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. It's okay not to be perfect. It's totally okay to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of them. So we may as well make a space to love ourselves through them. That's my video today. If you found that helpful, click that thumbs up and let me know in the comments, was there something that you loved about this video, about that perspective? I love to hear your feedback in the comments. And just a reminder to hit that subscribe and the bell for more notifications every time a new video is posted. I'm Sarah Tomlinson, the girl with many secrets, and I just want to send you so much love on your healing journey. I hope you have a beautiful day.